There we are. Hello and welcome. Welcome to Mindful Mondays. My name is Michelle Precourt. It's a pleasure to be with all of you here today. Before we start this conversation, I want to take a moment to recognize the people who were here before us. And these are our Indigenous friends. I'm broadcasting live from Squamish Nation, otherwise known as Squamish, British Columbia. I invite our viewers to share where you are calling from and take note of gratitude for being on these traditional lands. So welcome to Mindful Mondays. Before we begin our conversation with Scott, Sandy, and of course you, Ahmed, I want to share what this is all about, Mindful Mondays. In short, it's about creating conversation around human resources related issues in the workplace. Some of the conversations that we've had with our guests of the past have been around career-related stress. That's a big one, right? Workplace wellness initiatives. Things like today we're talking about recruitment and talent acquisition. Things that are causing human resources professionals to pause, business leaders to pause, and people like myself who are consultants who support all of those folks that I just mentioned. So welcome, Scott and Sandy. It's nice to see you both, and thanks for being here today. And with that, I'm going to pass this over to you, Ahmed, to get things rolling.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Michelle. Hello and welcome, everyone. Today, we're talking about inspired recruiting. So in this Mindful Monday, we'll be discussing creative ways recruiters can navigate the evolving talent landscape to attract top candidates. Together, Scott Stoppler, President and CEO of ECL Group, and Sandy Jacobson, VP Richardson Executive Search, have been in the recruitment space for over 30 years. They will share their behind-the-scenes insights and help us maneuver today's challenges. So, with that, I'd like to give a quick introduction for both Sandy and Scott. So Sandy brings over 17 years of experience in the executive search and talent management industry and works with only the top tier employers and candidates across Canada. She sits on a number of boards such as the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce and is a leader in her industry. And today we also have Scott Stoppler today. Scott is President and CEO of ECL Group of Companies, ExecuTrade Consultants Limited, the parent company of Richardson Executive Search, ExecuTrade, Stoppler Hughes, and Outsource. He is part of the Young Presidents Association, the YPO, and has over 20 years experience building and diversifying HR, staffing, and executive search companies. Those are our guests today. And of course, we have Michelle of Mindful HR Services, and she's an HR consultant and the founder of Mindful HR Services. So thank you for bringing us all together today, Michelle. And then we have myself. I'm a marketing and brand strategist. However, today I'm here as your host and moderator. So thank you again, Michelle, for having me back on your Mindful Mondays today for your LinkedIn Live session. And we get to talk about inspired recruiting. So with all of that, let's jump in. Sandy, I'm going to start with you. You're on my screen and my eyes just went straight to you. So I'm going to start with you. Is recruiting top talent any more difficult in today's world of work than it was, say 2 or 3 years ago? What's changed?
Thank you, Emma. And again, too, it's a pleasure to be here with everyone this morning. So I look forward to some really good dialogue and hopefully you're getting some good discussion going around, recruiting and some of the challenges, but some of the opportunities as well. And I think, Ash, when you look at, has it changed, Ahmed, in terms of recruiting, from a couple of years ago? And I think, of course, the pandemic has certainly changed the landscape, I think, across the globe. So that's very interesting to see how, I think people's priorities have really changed. So I know over the last 2 years, I know that we've really seen a shift where there's been a lot of vacancies where a lot of people have left organizations. They talk about the year of resignations, in 2021, and I think we're still seeing that today. The pandemic has certainly changed priorities around, people wanting to work remotely, some do not. Michelle and I were kind of chatting this morning before we went live, talking more about even commuting to and from work. Some, again, if you're in a bigger city or a bigger center, you're looking at, the cost of, let's say, gas or parking or some of those additional challenges, or even the drive, let's say an hour to and from the office, where people's priorities have changed now. They maybe don't want that anymore. So I think that, even with kids, if you've got younger families or wanting the flexibility or things like that too as well, those are all things that have impacted people either looking for work or choosing to make a move in terms of another, career opportunity. So I think we sort of as, whether it's, executive search firms, recruiters, businesses, have to be kind of mindful. And I think a lot of that's really around, having sort of a, what are you capturing, let's say, when you're kind of hiring, what's your return on investment? Do you have a hybrid model, let's say, to be able to attract people, to maybe offer some of these, incentives that they're maybe looking for their next, employment move, right? So I think having that ability to really showcase, who you are as an organization, what you're looking to be able to attract, and then again, sort of what sort of opportunities you can provide your employees as they want to be able to join your company and sort of evolve their career. I also think too that, through social media and different means, I mean, you're not seeing, I think before there were a lot of job fairs and there was things like that people were out more in front of individuals. And you're not seeing that anymore. Now you're seeing a lot of it being more digital and how you can digital market, let's say, again, whether it's opportunities, your company, roles, and different platforms that you can sort of, approach and try to sort of entice people to either see your postings, or you can actually direct source or sort of tap them on the shoulder for, the opportunity that you think that they'd be really, suited for.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said there about priorities and how, I think the pandemic has shone a light on some of that. And so it's interesting when we think of those as so much so, did the priorities themselves change, or did we highlight the nuances of what those mean to people in the workplace now? So I loved what you said there. And, of course, social media really changes the exposure of what, we see as people having available to them for work now. Compared to other companies and what they might have had before. Scott, did you have anything to add there?
No, I think Sandy really nailed it on the head there. There isn't a one size fits all approach. Mm-hmm. It has to be multi-pronged in terms of attraction, retention, and just, have things changed? Yes, everything has changed. So the original question, everything has changed.
Everything has changed. I love it. Michelle, what about you? Are you seeing anything different with the clients that you're speaking with, or that what you're seeing it happening in engagement really across the workplace?
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you think about how the world of work has changed over even going back decades, right? So at one point, it was very much dominated by the employer. You show up, I'm going to tell you what to do, and there weren't a lot of rights for people. Mm-hmm. Hence, unionization came in, and employment legislation, and all these things that have helped to recognize that we're all important. The employer is important, that employees are important. And so from then so much has changed. And I think it's just this, it's fluid, right? Life is fluid in general. And, if we step back to a couple years ago, think about some of the fundamental psychology, right? So my mind was going back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where safety was a huge concern, is still a concern. And so people were retracting to their homes and worried about going outside and worried about public transportation. And well, now I can't get to work because I don't have a car. And are the people around me safe once I'm at work? So a lot of this has changed how we work. And stemming from what you had said, Sandy, there around, the cost of fuel. Do I drive to work? Is it better for me? Is it more economical for me to work from home? Yet then there's the cost of housing. And so people are living in smaller spaces, some of these like micro-sized condos, or working from home just isn't feasible. So there is no one size fits all, like you said, Scott. But one of the things that I'm seeing is this real life evaluation. What is important to me? So I think a values exercise is so very important. I usually start with that when I do my career development work, is what's important to you. And if you didn't have this one thing, it would cause you to quit your job, right? These are some big questions that take some time to think about. But some of the esoteric stuff is important foundational work so that you're putting yourself out there to an employer that can give you what you need and that you can give them what they need, because it is definitely a two-way street. And then I also think about it also depends on demographics. So no different from when I was starting my career out, is I was looking for experience. So I never stayed in one place for very long. I tapped out quick because I wanted to learn and grow and try something new. That hasn't changed. Young people want an experience, and then as you develop as an individual in your career and you recognize what you like and you don't like, once you find something that works for you, then you stick to it. And so there's that piece of it. But what I'm also noticing, and these are very general statements, we'll say that, there are definitely those folks who work well far into what we might consider retirement age. But I do think that the pandemic has said, how do I want to spend these next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Do I want to keep working? Do I want to step back and maybe do some part-time work? We're seeing more of that out there, and I'd be curious about your comments, Scott and Sandy. But before, I just want to finish off this thought is around reevaluating what's important. So how much money do I really need? How much is enough when it comes to retirement? So I'll pause there, but I am curious about if you're seeing more part-time and more contract opportunities come up in terms of the roles that you're recruiting for.
So I'll maybe just jump in quickly, and I'll have maybe Scott kind of dovetail on this. So I would say you kind of touched on that, Michelle, too. I think demographics have a lot to play. I think you're seeing some of the younger generations sometimes working 2 or 3 contract roles to gain that experience like you talked about. And they're also seeing a real engagement around, some of the older generation where they're a really engaged workforce. And we've recently launched actually Wave Canada, which really kind of focuses more on contract insurance consultants. So they actually typically are kind of more latter part of their career, still wanting to work, but they're working remotely. So we're seeing a really big opportunity with that. And I don't know, Scott, if you want to touch maybe on Wave Canada a bit more about the concept behind that, but I think that does dovetail into other industries as well.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. So WAVE, and it's WHAVE, stands for Work at Home Vintage Experts. It's a US-based organization that started around 12 years ago. They've come up to Canada in partnership with us and the ECL group. And yeah, it predominantly focuses on the insurance industry, but the business model lends itself to going beyond that, and just really qualified, experienced people that don't want to be working 40 hours a week in the office. They want that flexibility. To your original question of, are we seeing more of a demand for part-time and contract-based? No, not really. What we're, from the employers, the demand we want is there's such a demand for work right now. They want full-time. They want as much as they can get, basically. Where we are seeing part-time opportunities is when the clients realize, hey, we need to be flexible here to try and attract who we can. Ideally, we'd like them full-time, direct hire, but some organizations are starting to be a bit more open-minded with different structures and timelines to allow them to attract some talent as well.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting perspectives. From the conversation we were having a little bit earlier in terms of the changes that we're seeing happening with workplace preferences, or where priorities are shifting and things like that, we had a question come in, and they were asking, this is before we jump to the next part of our session here, is, are the changes described happening at the C-suite level as well? And so, Scott, you had mentioned some interesting things just now. I'm wondering if maybe you can take this question.
Yeah, the change, are we seeing the changes happening at the C-suite? Yes. I mean, in terms of mindset and what do I really want, what's important to me, we're seeing that across the board. I think as human beings, there's been these last 2 years have caused us all to take a step back and reflect on where am I really getting joy? What's really working for me? What isn't? And making those shifts. What I can say specifically to the C-suite and is that the pandemic was hard on all professionals in a workforce, whether from all aspects of the quote unquote corporate ladder. But what I can say is that senior leaders, there's a strong theme of burnout, and if not burnout, like serious exhaustion. And because as senior leaders, they weren't often the ones that were getting laid off. They were the ones that were taking on 2 and 3 other people's roles that were beneath them. That workload was added onto them during the pandemic. They were also the ones doing the layoffs and really delivering the bad news. And so and I had a conversation this weekend about this as well, just that this from the C-suite perspective, there's some serious recovery needs to happen and filling back up that gas tank in order to continue to lead and move forward, because it was draining on everybody.
Right. And I mean, those are obviously very difficult, not just conversations, but changes to take on. And especially when we look at the human side of all of this.
Yeah.
There's a person that's doing that at the end of the day, right? You have this perspective of layoffs, but you also have this part of you're now taking on multiple jobs that you either didn't have capacity for before, and now you're having to take it on, and that's why you have those people there, or you're having to maybe learn a new skill or think back to a skill you had once before. So,
And
there's a lot of things that go into that for sure.
yeah, and on top of that, the companies that got through COVID, they did it by pivoting and adapting and completely reinventing their business model. And that is no small task. And in a lot of cases, I feel it happened 2 to 3 times for an they probably pivoted at least that many times during the pandemic. And
Right.
now pivoting again, coming out of it to say, how do we want to, here's where we made it through, here's where we are, where to from here. So that cannot be underestimated, the work and effort involved in that too. So
Absolutely. Let's keep the conversation going. I love the points that are coming up here. I think there's a lot of great discussion. The next question I wanted to ask, and I think it kind of relates to what we've been talking about before, but Michelle, I'm going to pick on you this time. You work with clients in career transition. So, how has the pandemic changed job search, or has it even?
Yeah, well, to use Scott's words, yes, everything has changed. Everything has changed. And, I think I kind of touched on this previously, Ahmed, but it's really about reevaluating what's important. Some folks, because they were so caught off guard, as it's not uncommon, you think that everything's going okay at your work, and then all of a sudden, there might be this talk of a corporate reorganization, but you never think it's going to be you, right? And then something happens, and you're the person that's sitting across the table with your manager and HR, and going, "This isn't how I was intending to start my day." And so some of what I'm hearing from folks are, "I don't want to go through this again." Is there a place where there's more guarantee that this isn't going to happen again, right? They don't want to be across that table again. They don't want the risk. And again, this is, a very general statement, but some of what I suggest is think about the places that have really thrived and the places that haven't, right? Those are the places that you're going to want to go to see the folks that have pivoted, the folks that have changed, the folks that continued augmenting their programs and services and have grown. That's not for everybody. Some people are like, no, I love the idea of working in a startup. Okay, well, the risks that come when you're working in a startup, right? That's why it's called a startup. But it's really about I think reevaluating. And then also what I've noticed is people are taking the opportunity to not necessarily engage in career transition services as quickly. They're like, I haven't had a break in 20 years. I'm going to take a break. And I know that I've got 12 months to tap into these services. I'll let you know when I'm ready to reach out. So I've seen some of that, Amit. I think that kind of adds on to what I said previously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's an interesting perspective, especially when we think about reevaluating the priorities outside of work as well, and how important that has become. And again, going back to that light that's being shone, people are looking at things differently, and they're understanding now. I don't want to say more so than before, because I feel like it was probably always there, but I think people are looking at it now with a different lens, maybe, and they're looking at it in a way that they're seeing how there's had to have been some benefits that have come out of this whole transition in terms of the family life. And we talked about the benefits before of working from home and the flexibility, being able to do different things. And so overall, I think there's that shift that's happening.
I'll just add quickly here, Amit, that I think that people are also thinking, how can I do this in a different way? How can I get that same sense of fulfillment, but in a different way than a 40-hour work week, a different way from having an hour commute each way, a different way from, maybe working evenings and being away from my kids. So that's the other thing that I've seen as being different.
Absolutely. I love the fulfillment part of what you said.
I was going to even interject around travel, because that's something where the shift in business now too. There were so many companies that were traveling, let's say, to meet customers on site and all that virtually now too. That's really changed where a lot of companies have said, you know what, we know how successful we are kind of virtually, so travel's definitely been cut down huge.
Yeah. I think back to a colleague of mine in Ottawa who lived outside of Ottawa and drove downtown every day. So he had fuel costs, and then it was $250 a month for parking. Right. And when I checked in with him, they may be back downtown now, but when I checked in with him, he's like, I just got more money in the bank. That's what's happening for me, right? So there's that side of it too.
Yeah.
But to fly across the country for a 2-hour meeting, that there's a lot better things we can do with our time than that. I mean, face-to-face is so important, and that's never going to go away. And that's the other side of this. Well, there's two things I want to say. Work-life balance is impossible to achieve, in my opinion, because when is it ever perfectly balanced? Never. Either like this or like this. And so, and I've said this since before COVID, what we're striving for is work-life integration. That's achievable, I believe. And, but, moving forward, the other side of the equation, though, is what the last 2 years, especially for people who have been working from home the whole time, there is a strong sentiment that's pretty balanced that says, I want to be back in the office. I want to be with my coworkers. This has been very hard on me mentally, being so alone so much, or so much virtual work. It's too much. And so, again, it's like a bit try and find a healthy balance for what it is, because as human beings, we're not supposed to spend this much time alone.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's a great pausing point there is, we don't want to spend so much time alone. And there's this itch for, there's a semblance that we want to get back into the office and that kind of thing. And so I think just in the interest of time, I'm going to move things now forward to the next section, which is Scott. I'm gonna pick on you for this one now. Is it fair to say that there are more career opportunities and less talent available? It doesn't matter where you look. It seems like every door front has a "we are hiring" sign, or recruiting postings are going like gangbusters right now. What approach has ELC Group taken to tackle this demand for what seems to be a talent shortage? And where have they gone? Where do we find people? And I think this relates also as well to a question we had that came into the chat, which was, how has recruiting changed in 2021 versus 2022 so far? So kind of a packed question there.
I'll try and answer it in the order that it came. I think it's fair to say. I mean, I never like quoting things as absolute fact unless I've seen the numbers. But yeah, there's a strong general sentiment out there that most places are hiring, and that's something that I keep in. You show me a company that doesn't have not one single, HR recruitment need going on right now, and I'd be surprised to know who they are. What are we doing? What's the ECL group of companies doing to tackle this demand? And I mean, it's getting creative. It's leveraging existing relationships. It is direct sourcing. It is, working with strong digital marketing campaigns. It is referral programs. It is looking at a segment of, and that goes back to actually Sandy's point about Wave Canada. The reason this is going so well is because there's a major shortage of insurance professionals out there right now in terms of coming into the marketplace. Well, they have to look at a segment of the population that previously was overlooked. It's like, why would I hire someone that's at the tail end of their career? Well, there's a lot of reasons. So it's thinking outside the box and getting creative to find the great people to do this. But where have they gone? That's the $1 million question. And I was asked this a while ago, and there's multiple reasons. There's been a serious lack of immigration over the last 2 years in the country because of COVID. And as a country as small as big as Canada is in terms of land mass, but small in terms of population, and that's a real factor. There is a lot of professionals out there who just completely left their industry, and they've done a full reset, gone into something else. So those people might as well have moved away, as in the eyes of the companies they would have gone to work for. They're no longer relevant because they've completely moved into a different industry. There are a lot of people that they realized, hey, you know what, maybe I can retire. Maybe I don't need as much money as I thought. Although with inflation happening, I think that's going to change. I think there's going to be people staying in the workforce longer, not shorter, because of if this inflation keeps up. But yeah, and I mean, sadly, several thousands of people died in Canada, which then accelerated the disbursement of wealth from themselves into their people in their family, which again allowed some people to say, you know what, I don't need to work again, or I'm going to take some serious time off. And then there's also people that are still in our city. They might be in Ottawa, they might be in Vancouver, Edmonton, but now they're working for a company that's based out of Los Angeles, Singapore, the UK. So now they're not part of the equation in terms of the local workforce either. So in my opinion, that's where they've all gone. One of those 5 to 6 areas.
I think that's really great insight. You brought up some interesting points there in terms of especially the aspect of now you can really work anywhere. Like it was there before, but I think this whole virtual work from home, work from anywhere type of idea that's really been accelerated through the pandemic has really opened the doors for people to literally work from anywhere, and it doesn't matter where you're located anymore. And that opens up opportunities too for real estate and other things where you could be living, working somewhere where the real estate may be cheaper, but for a company situated somewhere where the real estate is higher. So
yeah. I see the comment on there. It said lots of professionals move to entrepreneurship or self-employment. Yeah, that's true as well. I think also there was, Michelle, you were talking earlier about how does someone not find themselves on the wrong end of those tough layoff conversations again? What is less risky? I wanted to circle back to that and say, I don't know. I don't think there is. There is, everywhere we go, there's risk. I drove into risk today driving through our parking lot today because it's flooded. And so I think the place for an individual to have the least amount of risk is the one that they feel where they can add the most value and really the one where they put their heart into it. Because when they're adding value and they're doing what they're passionate about, those are typically the people that have the most success. And unless it's another catastrophic situation like what happened at the start of the pandemic, I think they're probably going to have the best chance of having a good run there. But the risk is everywhere. So
absolutely. Folks, I think that's all we have time for today. I hate to be the bear or the person to stop the great conversation that we're having so far, but wow, that was the quickest 25 minutes that I've ever flown through, and especially in one of these. So at this point, I'd like to put a pause on our conversation. Of course, there's lots and lots to unpack there, and I think a lot of great follow-up questions. I'm still seeing questions coming in and comments. So obviously people are engaged and they're highly in tune with this topic. So Michelle, more for us to take away coming out of this. Michelle, please, I'd like to hand it over to you as we bring today's session to a close and to tell us about the next and upcoming conversations we're going to have.
Yeah, thanks, Ahmed. So normally, as much as possible, we try and host these calls regularly on the third Monday of every month, but April is an exception. So April 25th is the next Mindful Monday, and it's about making meaningful connections at work. We're going to be talking with another HR consultant from Loft Consulting, Sherry Engel, and it's going to be about employee engagement and looking at an employee engagement from a different perspective, from the perspective of feeling connected to our team, our manager, the corporate culture, all of that. I think that it also ties in with recruiting, right? You need to recruit to tie into the culture. So we're just going to be continuing this conversation next month on April the 25th. The other thing that I'll say here about the folks who didn't get their questions answered is feel free to connect with any one of us on LinkedIn here. And Ahmed, I see that you just shared all of our information here as well. So there's our websites. I've got my monthly newsletter. And of course, back here again on April the 25th. I'll close by saying thank you very much, Scott, for your time today and for your engagement and your very thoughtful comments and insights of what's happening in your world of work. So thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And thank you, Sandy, as well. You brought a different perspective to the table and really appreciate your thought leadership around this topic as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for having us, as part of this Mindful Monday. It's been just a wonderful, wonderful sort of dialogue. And feel free to reach out to us anytime for anybody that had questions that didn't get a chance to get answered. I think we'll share our contact information, but we'd love to support the world of recruiting as much as we can and certainly be a resource for anybody.
And thank you, Ahmed. Thank you for your time and your energy today and for keeping us on target.
As always, it's a pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. Love it.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.